The first question is, what is the difference between growth capital private equity, where I invest at my firm, and other types of private equity? The basic way to think about it is that growth capital private equity is investing in businesses and companies, and your lever for financial return is really driving growth and continuing to scale the business, whereas traditional private equity or some of these other types, buyout, distress perhaps, those are investing in businesses and using more so financial engineering and some of these other levers to really generate a return to your investors. So when I look for businesses and when my firm is conducting diligence on opportunities, our question is always, how can this business continue to grow from where they are today? How can we take this business to the next level? And a lot of that factors into our analysis, where we're not necessarily underwriting single digit growth. Most of the businesses that we're involved in are growing north of 20 to 30% year over year. So when we think about a return, it's not necessarily looking for profitable businesses that you can layer on, a few turns of debt and a bit of leverage and generate a return by paying down on that debt over time. It's more so, how can you provide growth capital to these companies to help them continue to hire out the sales and marketing team, expand the product suite, and do other things that will lead to larger and accelerated growth trajectories. So that's how we think about our perspective and our strategy relative to other firms. And, that's one of the big differences as it relates to the deal process and how we think about deal flow. Part of the growth equity landscape in most of the firms that you'll find, they have a mix of outbound and inbound deal sourcing. So my time as someone on the junior team is spent partly sourcing and finding new opportunities. We invest in software and internet businesses primarily, as well as a few on the tech-enabled services side. So what I spend a lot of time looking for are businesses that are vertical software businesses, software and payments, financial technology, consumer internet businesses, recurring services businesses with a tech component. It's a mix of taking a thematic approach where we have a few verticals we've invested in historically that are interesting. We have a few verticals that are interesting now just by virtue of some of the deals that we're looking at, and then doing a deep dive into there. For example, financial technology, we've done a lot. We were investors in the business in the life sciences technology category, healthcare technology. We're investors in a business that's in the restaurant technology sector. So looking at themes in areas such as that and understanding where are the macroeconomic tailwinds to support the increased use of software solutions, or to support some of these newer businesses that are arising over the course of a year, the course of a couple of years, and understanding that. So part of it's that aspect of the deal flow. We receive a lot of inbound from other investors that we know that are a bit earlier stage. Think your traditional early stage venture capitalists or seed stage venture capital funds who have businesses that have since outgrown that portfolio, and that's a manner of deal flow as well. But most of it is outbound. And what we look for when we're sourcing these deals and when we're sourcing these businesses, it's a few things. Generally, we are investing in companies that are around $10 million of revenue, as I mentioned, growing north of 20 to 30% year over year. And that creates a wide universe of businesses, but we spend a lot of time with companies that are a bit more capital efficient. So companies that have not necessarily raised a ton of money, that have not necessarily burned through a ton of money. And while they may not be profitable, they can show signs of achieving profitability in a downturn or in an environment where it's less favorable for them to grow at all costs. Generally, we are amenable to anything across the software, internet, or tech-enabled services category. It's a very broad focus, but we only do so many deals per year, so we have to have a bit of a wide lens and a bit of a wider scope to really find opportunities. And then, as people are thinking about getting into private equity and beginning a career, I think there are a few things that were really helpful for me. So I went to the University of Maryland, and my first experience in private equity was when I was a junior in the business school. And, that really came about by virtue of leveraging the alumni network. I actually interned for a small lower middle market private equity fund in Baltimore for a semester or so as a junior. And that internship came about by firstly understanding that private equity was something I wanted to go into. It's very easy to become confused, or it's very easy to become overwhelmed with some of the options that you can select coming out of the business school or coming out of University of Maryland as a whole. You have, your finance tracks. You have your bankers, your folks in corporate finance, hedge funds, wealth management, private equity, so on and so forth. And, really take the time to do your research and to understand what's interesting to you, what's exciting to you personally. So that's the first step. But after that, I'd recommend reaching out to alumni, folks like myself perhaps, or folks who you see either through LinkedIn or whatever resource you want to use, who are within the private equity industry and who, could be willing or seem like they would be willing to lend some guidance and lend some advice. And that was something that I took to heart, and I really set about reaching out to folks in the industry as a sophomore, as a junior. And, I got some good responses. Some people didn't respond, but, the saying goes, you only need one yes. And then next thing you know, you're moving onward and upward within your career. So, for me, that yes came about by virtue of the fund that I interned as a junior. The person who hired me was a University of Maryland alum. So, without that student network, without leveraging that alumni student relationship, it's not certain that I would be here today, but I think it's definitely something that can be very valuable and can give you a nice point of leverage as you think about your careers. And, I think the other thing is that there are many different paths to getting to private equity. There's your traditional 2 years of banking, which is very much the recommended path if you're looking to do something on the larger buyout side. A lot of the firms, such as a KKR, for example, or Blackstone, they have a fairly stringent pipeline of where they hire from, and that pipeline usually encompasses folks who've done investment banking. So if that's something that you're interested in and you're certain that that's the case, then I almost always recommend banking. A few of these firms have entry-level programs, analyst programs, but generally the investment banks do a very good job of training and getting people on the same level of knowledge and the same skill set. So that's my recommendation for that. But outside of that, if you're looking at other avenues of private equity, real estate private equity, growth capital, distressed value investing, I'd say be creative about how you think about approaching people and be certain to reach out to people in the industry, because I think they could be helpful. And, obviously to the extent that you're exploring your careers and you're thinking about some of these options, definitely lean on the folks who have been there and who have done that, because I think they were in your shoes at one point and they can provide some of the best guidance. So that's a bit about my experience with private equity and, a bit about my journey there. And obviously Max and everyone else has their own unique experiences as well. So leverage the people around you. Everyone wants to continue to grow and continue to do well professionally. And I think there's some great resources around you if you just, take the time and utilize them.